guys, we're back again for the second installation of the comic experience. Hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Hi there, you're taking a look at the very first page of the comic experience. To get started here, if you take a look at the very top, there's a short passage I'd like to read to you. It states, "Drawing is a wonderful skill that everyone possesses. In order to further progress with one's drawing abilities, an artist must practice. The following exercises are meant to enhance your drawing abilities." The whole purpose of this very first page is to get our students to think as an artist would think. We don't want them to think the typical way they do in regards to drawing and say, oh, I'm just drawing this shape or that shape. We want them to get into a correct mindset where they begin to think more as an artist would. So to get you going with this very first page, if you take a look right here in the very first row, you'll see a row of shapes. We've got a rectangle, an oval, another shape here, the triangle, followed by somewhat of a circle. And what students are going to be doing is recreating these shapes in the section beneath. So the rectangle gets drawn right here, the oval gets drawn here, and so on. Well, at this point, once my students finish with this in regards to drawing the shapes, because it's a really easy activity, I want to bring it up a notch. So what I do is I get into the concept of anthropomorphism. That's where you take an inanimate object, maybe like a desk or a chair, and you give it human characteristics. So I typically go through that with my students and say, okay, this is a rectangle, guys. What can we do to anthropomorphize this rectangle? So they might draw legs and feet and add eyes and hair to the shape. They might do other things and create dialogue for the shape. And we want to go through that type of routine through every one of those shapes. So you might have a little triangle with a pair of legs and arms, and the students could draw a face on it. That's an example of anthropomorphizing these shapes. The next portion of this, if you notice, there are lines. There's a thin line and a thicker line. Then there's a thin squiggly line and a thick squiggly line. Again, we want to have our students recreate these lines in the area provided beneath, right in this area. So our students would create the lines, and then we'd have a discussion. Hey class, how do you get a thin line when you're drawing the way an artist would draw? And they'll tell you things like, oh, well, you need to press the pencil really lightly. Or if your pencil's really sharp and you drag it right along, it'll make a really thin line for you. Then move on to the thicker lines and have that same discussion. Hey class, how did you get the thicker lines? And they'll tell you things like, oh, I pressed a lot harder on my pencil, or because my pencil wasn't as sharp, it made somewhat of a thicker line. Or hey, another thing I did is I created a small rectangle and I shaded the area within it. And they would go through the same process again for the thin squiggly line and the thick squiggly line. At this point, typically, I'll have them turn the page over and I'll give them somewhat of a difficult task. The task is to create some type of drawing that consists solely of 10 lines. So things that I've seen in the past include stop signs. The 2 lines for the pole and the 8 lines that make up the octagon. I've seen different things like houses, and students get really creative. As they're going through a process like this, they're really using higher order thinking skills because they have to really think cognitively about the structure that they're building and the structure that they're creating. Furthermore, if you wanted to add on to that, you could give them a slightly different assignment, like maybe you can only use 10 straight lines and 5 squiggly lines. Or it doesn't matter what type of line it is, you can only use 10. Things like that, so you can change it up a little bit. At the very bottom of the page, you'll notice that there are different ovals. There are about 6 of them. What I like to do with this activity is I'll have a pair of students sitting next to each other, or maybe a triad or a quad of students, and I'll give them a topic. I might say something like, in the very first phase, I'd like for you to show a face that is happy. And right away they'll start by creating the eyes, the nose, the mouth, And the mouth is always somewhat of a U because the U is symbolic of a happy face. So the mouth at this point kind of really dictates the emotions that will be portrayed on the face. Then I'll tell the students, okay, at this point you want to switch your papers with the person next to you. And as they switch papers, now I'll give them a slightly different topic. I'd like for you to create a face that is very sad. And most of the time, again, they'll start with the eyes, they'll move on to the nose, and from the nose they'll create an upside down U for the mouth. And the mouth here, being somewhat of a grin, makes the character appear somewhat sad. And then we'll compare and contrast the happy face and the sad face. So not only are we getting into the issue of drawing here, we're also really focusing on an important skill for the student's development, which is comparing and contrasting. From there, I'll move on and I might say something like, create a character that has a hat on, and create another character that's crying in tears. Create a character that's really angry. Create a character that is just super ecstatic. Those are ideas, and every time I mention a new idea, they pass their papers. At the very end, they get their papers back. The whole point of this is for students to start working with each other, and also for them to realize the different types of work that other students in the class are doing. It's important that they see other samples, so just because it helps them with the creative process. It gives them more ideas. And from each other, they're ultimately going to learn a great deal. Thank you very much, and that's a really quick intro with the very first page of the comic experience. Hi there, you're taking a look at the very first page, which relates to dialogue practice. I'm going to go ahead and read the very top portion. When writing comics, words are extremely important because they help tell the story. In comic books, when the character is speaking, this is called dialogue. At times, characters may not be speaking. A thought bubble can model what a character is thinking. Fill in the dialogue or the thought bubble for the following pictures. In the first few, you will be given a dialogue bubble. In the following pictures, you will need to create the dialogue bubble. So on this page, this is basically the first time we expose our students to writing dialogue or filling in what a possible character might be thinking. It's a really easy page, and students always tend to love this page because of the amount of creativity that they get to use. For example, if you take a look at the character on the top left-hand corner, you'll notice he kind of looks like Frankenstein, yet he's got a candy or a lollipop in the hand. What I typically do here is I'll have my students go ahead and fill out the dialogue. Normally, we may do one at a time. After they fill out the dialogue and the entire page is completed, we play a game. The game is called the Mingle Game. The way the Mingle Game works is I'll sing the phrase, mingle, 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 a mingle, mingle, mingle. And then after singing that phrase, I'll say a number. I might say like 2, for example. And students would get into a group of 2. Throughout this time, they're standing, they're walking, they're mingling throughout the classroom. So again, a mingle, 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 3. They would get into a group of 3. As soon as they were in their group, I might say something like, share with your partners what one character's dialogue is. And then we'll get right back into it. A mingle, mingle, mingle. 4. They'll be in a group of 4. Share with your group the dialogue for the pair of characters at the bottom of the page. So we play the Mingle Game. The reason why we do this is so that, one, we can give our students some type of a break from sitting. They tend to do that throughout the day. Also, studies indicate that when students have been sitting for about 15 minutes at a time, pressure is placed on the spinal column, and because of that, it inhibits the blood flow that the brain receives, and that affects their thinking. So the more we can get our students up and moving, the better, because their brain will have more oxygen, which will in turn facilitate better thinking. So once they're in their pair or their group or triad or quad, whatever it may be, we want them to share out. So not only did they create, they wrote, they spoke it, they shared it with a partner or a group or several. After the page is over, I always kind of allow students to share what they've created so far. Maybe there are a few students who just really want to share their ideas with the class. A lot of times it's really funny. Students always truly enjoy this. To follow it up, if you recall, we worked on a page earlier where we flipped over to the back, and on the back you created an object, and that object was created out of 10 lines. So I would have my students at this point turn the page so that you're looking at the very back. Your job is to create an object that consists of 10 lines. After you've created the object, the goal is to add dialogue. So then they would either need to add a dialogue bubble, or, a thought bubble, or the actual dialogue itself. And that's pretty much the first page in the dialogue practice. The very next page focuses more so on creating the dialogue bubble or the thought bubble and the dialogue together. Thank you very much, guys. Hey, we're back and we're taking a look at our creative dialogue here. Typically the way I start off with this process is I'll read the top to my students. After I do that, if you notice, the top 3 characters are slightly different from the bottom 3 characters. The reason why, the top 3 are more along the lines of being individual, whereas the bottom 3 are in pairs. Yes, if you notice right above the pirate, there is a small parrot. And yes, I actually do have some students add dialogue for that, and even the crossbone skull that can be found at the bottom of the pirate. So as you're taking a look here, you'll notice that there's one big difference. The big difference here is that there are no dialogue bubbles. The reason why is your students are going through the comic experience. They're going to have to ultimately create everything from scratch. So they would create their own characters, their own dialogue bubbles. This page is just meant to give them more practice. So if you take a look at the tired looking monkey there, what we would have our students do is add dialogue first, and when I say dialogue I mean the written word, and then after that add the dialogue bubble. The reason why we write it out first is because when our students create the bubble first and then add the dialogue tends to go outside of the lines of the bubble, so it looks somewhat awkward. After that, we definitely want to move on and have our students create the dialogue for multiple characters. And the final part of this activity is to again play the mingle game. So you would say, a mingle, 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 a mingle, mingle, mingle. 5. Have your students get into a group of 5. Have them share out real quick, and then as soon as they're done sharing, again say, a mingle, 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 a mingle, mingle, mingle. Say a different number, have them get into a group of that many, and again, they're creating dialogue and they're sharing it. And that's the creative dialogue process.
Hi, we're back again here. I'm going to show you a really easy face to draw, and we're going to have a small conversation about dialogue. So here's a really easy face that I love to draw. Add some eyes here. After that, I kind of go back in, create the jawline, the rest of the head. Add a little bit of hair, and there you go. We've got a quick face. Here's the neck, got our shoulders, and we're good to go with the face. For the next part of this is the key point. When your students have created the drawing, they'll always want to create a dialogue bubble first, and then write the actual dialogue. That's incorrect. The reason why, when that happens, they tend to go outside of the lines of their dialogue bubble. So what I'm going to do here is change it up a little bit, and this will help fix that problem. What you want to do is have them write the dialogue first, and then have them create the dialogue bubble. When they do it the other way around, create the bubble first, they tend to run out of space. and this happens. So now it doesn't look as good as this does. So remember, always write the dialogue first, then create the dialogue bubble.